Hello and welcome to the complete Android and Kotlin development masterclass. In this video, I want to show you what you're going to learn in this course. So let's get started. First of all, on day one, we're going to set everything up. We're going to set up Android Studio, which is the software that we're going to use throughout the course. We're going to set up the emulator so that you can test your code directly on an Android-like device, which will allow you to test a lot faster than having to always connect your phone and test it on the phone, which is obviously also something that you will learn to do if you want to. Then on day two, we're going to build our first little application, which is not going to be an Android app, but it will be a Kotlin app. So a program that you can run on your PC using Kotlin, and that will be a rock, paper, scissors application, which is going to focus on the absolute basics of the Kotlin programming language and will teach you the fundamentals of programming in general. In day three, we're going to go into functions, objects, and coffee machines. So we're going to build everything around coffee machines, understanding how the coding concepts work with a few examples using coffee machines. Then we're going to go over lists and objects. So a little more about the basics of Kotlin programming that you will need to understand, because Kotlin is an object-oriented programming language, and there you need to understand what objects and classes are, which is really important. So that will basically prepare you to get started building your first apps. So we are not going to build Android apps before that, because it's just too much code that you will require even for the simplest app, and it's really important for you to understand what we're going to do. So that's why we're going to go over the basics first and then start with building Android applications using Jetpack Compose in day number 5. So day number 5, our first application, which will be the unit converter, where you will learn how to use Jetpack Compose for modern UI development, so user interface development. We're going to focus on composables, on text fields, on texts, and managing the UI state on day number 6. So understanding what state is, and then enabling you to basically make an application where the user interface manages what happens with the data in your app. So basically the numbers or the text that will be displayed. So very important concept, and that's what you're going to learn in day 5 and 6. Then we're going to start building really cool applications with the shopping list app. So there you will learn loads of UI features like lazy columns that allow you to store data in a list, which is super important. Basically nowadays, almost every application that you find out there has some sort of a list in there. And then we're going to also see how buttons work, how alert dialogues work, really cool stuff. Then you're going to also see what data classes are, lambdas, the map keyword, as well as the copy method, some really advanced stuff already, but you will be ready at that point. So that's pretty cool. Then we're going to go into the MVVM pattern. So the model view model architecture, which is super important for you to understand as an Android developer. So if you want to work as an Android developer out there, you have to understand this architecture, which we're going to do in day 8. So you're going to learn it there. While we're going to go back to our counter application and apply that architecture to it so that it is more clean, so to speak. Then on day number 9, we're going to go into concepts like JSON, retrofit, HTTP requests, and RESTful APIs. A bunch of keywords that you really need to know if you want to get a job as an Android developer. So you're going to learn how to use them and how they work while building a recipe application, which basically loads recipes from the internet and displays them inside of your application. So that's super helpful and very important to understand as an Android developer. In day number 10, we're going to go into navigation in Android, and specifically in Jetpack Compose. So you're going to see how to use the nav host, the nav controller, how serialization and deserialization works, and basically how to move from one screen to another and passing on data so that the second screen knows what the user has entered in the first screen, for example. On the 11th day, we're going to go into location. So we're going to see how to use the location of the user to display it, for example, inside of the application, or even store it if you want to. So we're going to manage permissions for accessing that information. So this is something that you actively as a developer have to request from the Android operating system, so to speak, to even get access to things such as the GPS data. And only when you have that, you can actually use it inside of your application. And managing permissions is something really important to know we're going to go over that on that location app day number 11. So there you will also learn what context is in Android, and you will display the location as well as the address. So not just the GPS data, so to speak, the latitude and longitude, but actually the address that we can also get using some specific packages that are made available to us by Google. So you're going to learn what geodecoding is, basically converting a latitude and longitude into an actual address that humans can understand and read. And then on day 12, we're going to go back to our shopping list app that we built on day 7, and we're going to add maps and location to that. So on day 11, you learn how to use location, and on day 12, you're going to learn how to implement the Google Maps feature so that you can actually display a map inside of your Android app. For example, if the user wants to know where he is or where a certain shopping list item could be bought, for example, so you could create like a proper list of entries where the specific items that you want to buy and which store you can buy them, for example. And this along the way will teach you so many different things about how to use external pieces of code for your own projects. We're going to do that already starting with, let's say, day 9, extensively using JSON retrofit and so forth. So you're going to learn how to use external packages to enable your application where so many different features are made available to you with just a little bit of effort. And that's so amazing about coding, where you don't have to write everything manually yourself. A lot of it is already built for you. So then we're gonna go into the wishlist application. And the idea behind the wishlist application is to teach you how to store data permanently. So there's this thing called the room database, which you're going to learn, basically storing data permanently on your Android device. And that is something that you need to know when you want to build any kind of application where data must persist. Basically, for example, even the settings you could store this way, or any kind of information the user wants to have permanently on the phone whenever they are reopening their phone, for example. They will learn how to use the CRUD operations, so the create, read, update, and delete operations, which are really important when it comes to databases in general. You're going to learn what DAO is and the dependency injection. So a bunch of really fancy keywords for basically what you need in order to get this thing to work. And then we're going to explore advanced UI elements such as the floating action bar, the top app bar, as well as understanding colors, how you can modify colors and how colors work in coding, so to speak, and the swipe to delete functionality that you are probably aware of and are already using in many other applications, such as maybe even Google Mail. If you use that, you can swipe and then it archives, for example, an email. So that's what you're going to learn, the concept of how to use the feature, how to swipe to do a certain or execute a certain piece of code. Okay, and then we're going to go over navigation and menus with a music app and even more for day 15 and 16. So this will be a fully UI-based application. There's no logic there, but it's really about teaching you all the ins and outs about menus, about drawers, about pop-ups, and all kinds of stuff that you can do with the user interface. This will basically enable you to achieve a lot more with your user interfaces, build a lot more different aspects that you might have seen in other apps that you want to implement, or that your employer wants you to implement, or even, for example, a contract that you take where they want to have a specific UI. All right, and at that point, we're going to have a day 17 where we're going to add a messaging application. So it's not built yet, but we're going to add that to the course in the next few weeks. And that will be a messaging app that will enable you basically to use Firebase, so to use a cloud storage where the data is stored in the cloud, and you can build an actual WhatsApp clone, so to speak, where you can really add your friends to that application, or they can register for your application. You can chat inside of your own chat application, so to speak. And while doing so, you're going to learn a lot about Firebase, about authentication, about logging into a service, about storing data permanently in the cloud, and also focusing on creating a dynamic and responsive messaging interface. Okay, and then we're going to go over to a second part of the course, which is the XML part. So you see, there is a little bit more about getting ready with Android Studio. So if you wanted to pass and jump directly to that point, you could, but then you would have to go to the basics of Kotlin in day 2, 3, and 4 still. So If you want to directly jump to XML, you can watch 1 day 3, 4, and then jump to the getting ready with Android Studio and more fundamentals with Kotlin, and then you could directly jump into age in minutes calculator using XML. So basically, you see from this point onward, we have a bunch of XML applications, and XML is basically the approach how user interfaces were built in the past. So all the way until Android 12, it was the common way to do. With Android 13, there was a shift. So XML was still the majority of the applications where it was used, but then there was a shift to Jetpack Compose, which is what you're going to learn first, which is now the focus of since Android 14. So Google really recommends you to use the Jetpack Compose applications when building apps nowadays. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach you, or you're going to learn XML starting from this chapter onwards, where you're going to build an age in minutes calculator, just teaching you the fundamentals of how to build a user interface using XML. And now you might wonder, why would I even do that? Well, the thing is, many applications out there are still built using XML. So once you have a job, for example, in a company, and they still use XML, you need to understand how that works. You cannot just go ahead and rebuild the entire application. That's not how it works. You would have to work with their legacy code and really help them improve whatever they want to add in terms of features to their application. So you need to understand XML for those particular cases. So if you start an application from scratch, you would not use XML usually nowadays. You would directly jump into using Jetpack Compose. But if you want to get contracts or want to work as a developer for a firm, like a company or whatever, then you need to understand XML still. So that's why there are a bunch of really cool applications that we're going to build using XML here. So the calculator app, which teaches you the basics of XML, the user interface concepts. Then we're going to build a quiz application, which is pretty neat. That's one of my favorite apps out of the course. A drawing app, that's going to be like super cool, where basically you can draw on a canvas and then store that image permanently on your phone as a screenshot and stuff like that. So it's really cool stuff. And then comes the 7-minute workout app. So in this application, you're going to build like a fully fledged 7-minute workout app that you probably have seen somewhere on the App Store already. And it's basically a workout app with the BMI calculator. It's well, it has 7 exercises with images that you can follow along and with a 30-second timer, and really do these exercises to then feel better after having done them and feel your body. All right. Then we're going to go into a Happy Places application, where you're going to learn how to use location, GPS, Google Maps, and so forth using the XML approach. Okay, so these applications, they are using the same concept, so to speak, but with a different approach. So that's going to be the Happy Places app. Then a weather app, where you're going to learn how to download the weather data. So the user can enter a city, for example, then it downloads the weather data for that city name, and it will display it on the phone, basically showing, okay, what is the weather like in that particular city. Really amazing stuff. And we're going to use JSON, JSON, and we're going to use a bunch of APIs for that. So application programming interfaces, basically some code that somebody else wrote already, and we can just use it for our own apps, which is pretty nice. And then finally, the biggest application in the entire course will be the Trello clone, which is a Firebase application where you learn user management, drag and drop, and basically using Firebase for online storage, authentication, storing data permanently in the cloud, and so forth. So this is like the biggest application, and it's basically a project management solution that you're going to build in this chapter. So really powerful stuff, and you could really consider this being like a bonus, so to speak, to the course. So the main part of the course really finishes at like this point here, roughly at Android 12, I would say. Everything past that is basically, you will understand already, if you went from start to finish, you will understand how to build those by yourself already, but still like having a project that you can follow along with and see how it's done specifically can make it a little easier for you. All right, so that's pretty much a summary of what we're going to build in this course and what you're going to learn. So you're going to learn everything that you need to know to build all kinds of Android applications, to get a job as a junior Android app developer out there. And I'm super excited to teach you all of that. and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next video. So let's get started in the next video.